or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro. You see that black boy over there running scared, his old man in a bottle. He done quit his 9 to 5, he drink full time, and now he's living in a bottle. See that black boy over there running scared, his old man got a problem, and it's a bad one. He ain't done pawned off damn near everything, his old woman waiting to bring for a bottle. And don't you think it's a crime when time after time after time people in a bottle?
I'm Tavis, Smiley, and we have made it to the third and final hour of today's program. I am honored to have you tuned in to us today from California to the Carolinas. I'm deeply grateful for that. I've been looking forward to this conversation because the timing of this dialogue, I think, could not be more propitious. And I'm even honored that the author of this new book, Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within, has joined us live in studio. His name is Mike German, former FBI agent and fellow at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program. Again, the text is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. I am pleased to welcome Mike German into the studio. Mike, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
It's my honor to have you in. I'm glad you're here, and glad we have an hour. There's a lot to unpack in this text. Let me just start with a couple of broad questions, and I'm deliberately not coloring this more than I am to give you all the canvas you need to paint. But just share with me where you think we are in this moment, and that's my question. Where are we? How do you see this moment that we find ourselves in?
I think it's obviously a very dangerous moment that some of these militant groups are energized and feel encouraged to act. But I think it will also be a little unpredictable, right? That people assume that these groups are on the same agenda as Donald Trump and the Donald Trump administration, but Donald Trump is exploiting them and they're exploiting him, and they know that Donald Trump is not going to bring them to the destination they want to get to. But it's headed generally in the right direction, right? It's giving them oxygen. It's giving them encouragement. They can come out in public. They can act violently in public, and either the police won't get involved, or as the pardons demonstrate, the police will, or law enforcement doesn't have the ability to hold these people responsible anymore.
Yep.
So they will be much more active, but that violence will be unpredictable. That it could target groups that wouldn't be obvious, including a lot of violence within the movement, right? You have people who looked at the January 6th attack as a catastrophe, right? The 1,000+ prosecutions kind of decimated these groups. The people who had to cobble together what was left and rebuild it in a much more hostile environment had to work hard to do that. And now you have these people coming out of prison saying, oh, we're back in charge again. So I think it's going to be very unpredictable. But the most dangerous part is people in government who share these white supremacist ideals are empowered as well. And, the militants that we tend to call extremists are really amateurs in the violence game.
Yeah.
Government actors really have the ability to commit violence against mass groups of people. And that's where it's always been part of our society, but that empowered can do great damage to lots of different people.
You said a mouthful already. A lot of that's worth unpacking. Let me get started right now. Let me start with this, the last point you made, because I do have questions about a couple things you said earlier. But let me just go to this last point right quick that you made, that there are people in power right now who share the views of these white supremacists. Tell me about that part, because that ought to be concerning to all of us. It's one thing for people on the outside to have these views, but when you now have, compatriots, as it were, on the inside of government, how combustible is that?
It's very combustible, but it's really important to understand the history of our country. It's not the way it's taught in school. The United States of America was formed as a white supremacist nation, right? It was built right into the Constitution. And the white supremacist philosophies and ideologies and theologies that justified European colonization, that justified the African slave trade, that justified the Jim Crow laws after slavery was banned. These ideologies and philosophies are what we call the white supremacist movement, are the foundation to it. And they were the foundation to the establishment of laws in this country, right? It was law enforcement, police officers who were supposed to enforce these racist laws. And that was their job, to enforce these racist laws. And as the civil rights movement had successes, these ideas were suppressed somewhat, but they're still very prevalent in our society. It's not an accident that if you look at corporate boards across the United States, they're disproportionately white and male. If you look at the United States Senate, disproportionately white and male, right? These power structures in the United States aren't that way by accident. The FBI, where I used to work, still disproportionately white and male. Decades after J. Edgar Hoover was dead and gone, it still remains a predominantly white male institution that is built to support this status quo. And that's why these civil rights gains we make are so fragile and are often pushed back against. It's not accidental, and it's not unconscious. That concept of unconscious bias and unconscious racism or implicit racism was something that was invented after discrimination was made the law. Anti-discrimination was made the law. And so if it's not legal, then these disparities must be an accident. It must be unconscious. It's a way to exonerate the white guilt.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
What I have argued in the book is that the disparities are well documented and have been well documented for decades. And if we're not addressing them and eliminating them, then it's no longer unconscious.
Yeah, point taken. Point taken. His name is Mike German. His book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. I've got a lot more questions, and he has answers. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
I started vaping my freshman year of high school, mostly because all my friends had vapes. I wanted to fit in with them and look cool and be a part of everything that they were doing. The hardest part about quitting for me was all my friends still hitting their vapes right next to me. It was really frustrating and confusing when I was trying to quit because in my head I knew I didn't want to do it anymore, but for some reason my brain still wanted it.
No quit story is the same. For free support, text KICK Nicotine to 66819 today. If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
Does indeed, with Mike German in studio, guest today. Delighted to have him here with me. Former FBI agent, fellow at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program. His new book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. There are a number of things you said earlier, Mike, that I want to just go back to right quick here before we move forward. You started this conversation by saying to me in the audience that there are ways in which Donald Trump is exploiting these white supremacists these days, and ways in which these white supremacists are exploiting Donald Trump. Tell me more about that first.
Sure. You might remember when Donald Trump started his campaign, the first campaign in 2015, with openly racist remarks about Mexicans all being criminals and things like this. There was this period where the media, unfortunately, reached out to white supremacists to see how they felt about Donald Trump's campaign and his statements. And initially, these groups were like, Donald Trump isn't one of us. He's a New York billionaire. Mm-hmm. He's got a Jewish daughter and son-in-law, and he's a big supporter of Israel, right? This doesn't have anything to do with us. We know he's not us. But as he kept saying things that were provocative, the media kept going back to these white supremacists, and you could see the light bulb over their head, and they went, "Oh, this is getting us mainstream media attention. Certainly, we're on Trump's team." And then there was an effort, this effort to work with people in Trump's orbit, and as what they saw it as is, the white supremacist and far right militant movement is very fractured. So they saw it as an opportunity to become more public and to recruit more aggressively by unifying the movement, and that's why the Unite the Right rally. That's what it was about, was to try to bring all these disparate groups together in one cause that supported Trump and the direction Trump was going, because he was kind of headed in the right direction, but not to their destination. So the discussion in the white supremacist groups was, when do we get off the train, right? When does it start taking us away from our destination? And when you look at the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting by a white supremacist, his last message was, forget the optics, I'm going in, right? And that was sort of messaging that, okay, I think now it's time for us to actually start taking more violent action. And that conversation has still gone on. So he exploits them for the support from their community. They exploit him for the oxygen that he gives them.
I get it. The other thing I want to get to right quick here is you mentioned the January 6th pardons that Donald Trump promised he was going to do.
Right.
He delivered in that regard. So I keep telling people when he says stuff, we got to believe him, right?
Right.
How did you read those pardons? How did you process his keeping his word in that regard?
I think it was a message to the movement that if you commit violent action that I approve of, I will exonerate you. I will make sure that you aren't punished for that. But more importantly, it was a message to law enforcement saying your efforts to enforce the law around this kind of violence will not be fruitful, and whatever efforts you make are wasted. And it was a message to law enforcement that I'm going to let these groups attack members of law enforcement that resist them. And I think that's where it was kind of dangerous, but we haven't seen law enforcement representatives, groups that represent law enforcement officers, really take a stand. There's been some mild comments by a few groups, but I'm hoping that law enforcement recognizes that these groups, even though they sometimes wore Blue Lives Matter patches on their shoulders, they were never supporters of law enforcement. And in fact, if you look through at the evidence, they kill police officers on a fairly regular basis. So I'm hoping law enforcement recognizes what a danger they pose, not just to the communities they're supposed to serve, but to police themselves.
How should we read the point you've just made now, Mike, which is a powerful point? It's one thing for me to be on the radio expressing my disdain, disgust with those pardons, and others expressed similar views in media all across the country. But I'm glad you went there because I wanted to go there anyway. I did not hear hue and cry from the law enforcement world. How do I read that? How do I read that law enforcement saw a president pardon persons who were engaged in criminality, but law enforcement writ large has not spoken out against what that president did? How do I read that part?
So there were a few comments.
Right. There were a few
that were made.
That's why I said writ large.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes. But you're right. There certainly wasn't any kind of sustained effort to show the disregard for this kind of decision. Donald Trump is a master. If he's a master of anything, it's of division, and he knows how to drive wedges between communities. And this certainly drives a wedge between law enforcement agencies, right? So what it says to them is, I'm not a supporter of all law enforcement. I'm a supporter of law enforcement that does what I want them to do. And I am against anybody who's against me or against the activities that I want to support. So it's like all the other dangerous messages that are trying to divide our society. It's trying to make a situation where there are some police departments and some police officers who will support him no matter what illegality he's promoting, and unfortunately that may come at the risk of other police departments.
Do I take the relative silence, there's that word relative, right? Because I know there were some comments to your point, Mike. Do I take the relative silence of law enforcement around his pardoning those January 6th insurrectionists to mean that they got the message?
Well, certainly they're afraid to express opposition, and that's part of how people who want to be authoritarians take power, right? They create so much fear in the community, and not just fear that, okay, if I do this, I will be harmed, but fear among everyone that, okay, I did what I thought he wanted me to do, and you look at the way they're targeting the FBI with the potential purge, asking for everybody's names. And, you see the Agents Association saying, hey, wait a minute, some of these agents didn't have a choice on what cases they worked, right? They're assigned to a case, and some of them may be Trump supporters that can you're putting under a microscope here and potentially purging. But that's the whole point of this kind of use of force, right, is that it's arbitrary, that there is no path you can follow to be safe, that you always have to be in fear of the next shoe dropping, and that something that was okay yesterday is not okay today. Yeah. And that paralyzes our society in a way that allows the authoritarian to take more power.
Since you mentioned the FBI, let me follow you. As I mentioned a few times already in this conversation with Mike German, he is a former FBI agent. By the way, his book, once again, is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. We'll get back to that book in just a second here. But I want to just pivot, if I can, and get personal with Mike German, because the FBI, at best, has a spotty history. At best, right? It's a spotty track record. I'm just curious on a personal level why you wanted to become an FBI agent.
Great question.
You saw that coming, didn't you? Yeah.
So my dad was an Army officer. I grew up in the government and believed government service was noble, and that all institutions have problems. I grew up during the Vietnam era with my dad going to Vietnam, so I knew that the government was far from perfect, but it took good people working for the government for it to improve. And I was joining the FBI in a period where they were they had put together reforms after the J. Edgar Hoover era. The Church Committee investigation revealed those abuses, and they had put in place reforms. So I felt that they were headed in a correct direction. And I was very fortunate. I worked on you might remember the savings and loan crisis of the late 80s and early 90s when, very powerful.
Charles Keating.
Right. Back when billionaires actually got investigated and
exactly.
prosecuted.
Way back when.
And then had the opportunity to work undercover against white supremacists and far-right militants. So it sort of educated me to how this white supremacy is so marbled through our society in a dangerous way. But then after the September 11th terrorist attacks, the FBI reversed all those reforms, and I knew that would be extremely dangerous. And it was the Muslim Americans who were immediately targeted. But once you open that aperture to start looking at a whole community as suspect, it's only a matter of time before they start blaming other whole communities for the bad acts of a few within those communities.
Yep. So that leads me to an obvious question. What do you make of Mr. Trump's nominee to lead the FBI, Kash Patel?
So the Brennan Center doesn't comment on political appointees. Obviously there's been a lot in the media, and if we look at his past record, there are a lot of things that the senators have appropriately in the process questioned about. One thing I would remind everyone, though, is that every FBI director has been a Republican, and the FBI has long targeted groups that it sees as political agitators as extremists, right? And it's fascinating in the FBI's domestic terrorism program that while there's a category for white supremacists and far-right militants, there are also categories for things like animal rights activists and environmentalists, and what they had called when I was working at the FBI, black separatists, even though there really isn't any black separatist movement since the 1970s, at least not a violent one. So they would disperse their resources in a way that targeted groups that were politically active but not violent, rather than focusing those resources on far-right militants who were regularly violent. And even to this day, the FBI can't tell you how many people white supremacists kill each year because they don't track that.
You can't throw me red meat and think I'm not gonna bite into it. So how should we read your earlier point that these FBI directors are always Republicans?
It's confounding why Democratic presidents nominate Republicans to these positions. But what we should know from that is that it is a deeply conservative institution, conservative in its leadership, conservative in its demographics, very white and very male. And if you look at the attitudes of white males across this country, you'll understand that this is not a group that as the House weaponization of government tried to present the FBI as somehow anti-conservative, but that was far from the truth. That was entirely an effort to suppress any investigations, appropriate or not, of conservative groups.
The book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. Let me go to that subtitle, and then we'll work our way back to the title and inside the pages of the text. The Enemy Within. When this book came across my desk for me to read and prepare for our conversation today, that subtitle jumped out at me because I'm not so sure that we accept this reality as an enemy within. You see where I'm going here.
Yes.
Whenever we talk about this issue of this kind of bad behavior, for lack of a better phrase, it's always coming to our shores, right? I don't know that we truly even now accept that this is an enemy within, and yet it didn't stop you from using that as your subtitle. Tell me more.
So I meant it both in the way you're suggesting, that this is an element that is destructive in the American society, but also that it's a destructive element within policing.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly that was shown on January 6th when police officers were among the mob that attacked the Capitol. But that's always been the case, right? Going back to the Jim Crow era and before, these police departments were hired for the purpose of enforcing the black codes and Jim Crow laws, racist laws. Our immigration policies were explicitly racist for decades and are still enforced in a racist way. So, we have to understand it as destructive to our society. Yep. And particularly because the book is about policing, and I'm hoping that police audiences will read it, that they realize it's a destructive element within law enforcement that they need to do more to address.
The book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. Our guest is the author of that book, Mike German. I say this and hope Mike won't be offended by it. I say all the time, I leave this studio every day smarter than when I came in. But can I just tell you, I love talking to enlightened white folk. I love talking to enlightened white folk. You're listening to Tavis, Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
I'm Alexandria Ikamoni with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Chinese tariffs on some American goods are in effect as of this morning, as President Trump continues to threaten trade wars with allies and rivals alike. Leaked government documents say large-scale immigration enforcement is coming to Los Angeles. While immigration enforcement has been ramped up across the country, no sweeping act has been taken in Los Angeles yet. All of the plane and military helicopter wreckage has been removed from the Potomac River following the recent mid-air collision near Washington, D.C. that left nearly 70 dead. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is temporarily shutting down live poultry markets after bird flu was detected in New York City. The Eagles are celebrating their second Super Bowl win in franchise history. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Lakers Nation is hoping tonight is the night Luka Doncic makes his debut in a Lakers uniform. The Lakers are at home against Utah. Doncic has not played since Christmas Day when he suffered a strained calf muscle. Ricky Dalton-Connect and Cam Reddish are back with the Lakers after the NBA rescinded the Lakers trade with Charlotte. Charlotte center Mark Williams failed the Lakers physical. The UCLA women's basketball team is 23-0 after their 62-52 win Sunday at Oregon. Guard London Jones led UCLA with 21 points. Next up for the Bruins, ranked number 1 in the country, a Thursday night showdown at number 7 USC. The Philadelphia Eagles made sure the NFL does not have a 3-piece Super Bowl champion. Philadelphia put a beatdown on the Kansas City Chiefs Sunday in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes was sacked 5 times. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
Are you a recent college graduate with a dream of getting a high-paying job in sales? A job where you can grow a lucrative career in multi-platform audio, digital, podcast, social media, and local events, along with world-class training and career growth opportunities. KBLA Talk 1580, located in historic Leimert Park, is currently hiring entry-level account executives for outside sales. Join a team featuring radio hosts Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornell West, Jesse Jackson Jr., D.L. Hughley, Dr. Nee Cordelai Corte, Zoe Williams, and our very own Dominique DePrima. For more information on attending our upcoming career fair, contact SMB at KBLA1580.com today.
What you want to do, huh?
KBLA Talk 1580 is thrilled to share that we have been named as a semi-finalist for the coveted American Climate Leadership Awards, honoring our climate work last year. We're also delighted to announce year 2 of our Climate Justice Crusade. This year's $2 million 12-month campaign will link and combat the relationship between climate change and poor health outcomes for African Americans and the poor. Climate inequities have taken a toll with multiple health triggers in the Black community, such as extreme heat and poor air quality, made worse by the recent wildfires. Our work to ensure climate justice and climate equity continues. In the coming weeks and months, you'll be hearing a lot more about our 2025 climate campaign. To learn more about our plans for this year and the companies and organizations supporting us, log on to our website at KBLA1580.com. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Mike German, former FBI agent and fellow at the Brennan Center, their Liberty and National Security Program. His new book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. I'm pleased to have him within the confines of the studio right now. He's no enemy within, but he's with us in the studio, and I'm glad to have him. I want to go back to one thing right quick before we go forward here, Mike. You mentioned earlier in this conversation that these white supremacist organizations, entities, that the movement is fractured. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why you see things like this unity rally to sort of bring them all together. What are you seeing? What do you think about the fractured nature of that movement, and whether in this moment it is less fractured, more fractured, still fractured? You tell me.
I think it's certainly as fractured. As I mentioned, there are a multitude of different philosophies and even theologies that support the concept of white supremacy, why whites should be dominant in a racial hierarchy. Mm-hmm. But, some of the groups are religious, using portions in the Bible that any Christian would know, but they pick out certain passages that say, that to them say that white people are dominant, white people are a special tribe. But there are other groups that are political who think all religion is a tool that Jews use to suppress white natural authority. And you can imagine that those two groups don't get along with one another very well. One who thinks that the religious nature of the calling is important, and the other thinks that that is actually detrimental to the movement. So you imagine that in dozens of different iterations, different kinds of, but they're also fighting for a relatively fixed group of people to be members of their community, right? We want you to join our group, not their group, because we want your membership dues, or we want to have more influence in the movement. So there's all this competing interest. Plus, there are groups that tend to involve a lot of criminal activity, so they do get some police attention, and there's a lot of paranoia that rides from that. So there's always friction, and look at January 6th. A lot of them coming out will come out having testified against colleagues, or come out having been outed as an informant in previous FBI investigations. And like any criminal organization, they're not necessarily very happy about somebody cooperating with the government. Yeah. And when I was undercover in the 90s, somebody going to prison became too great a risk, because they're under the control of the government. I can't trust them even if they're let back out. So I think there's going to be a lot of settling of where all these things go and who becomes the new spokesman. Moreover, they also have kind of a better platform now, so there will be arguments about whether the platform and the public attention is helpful or harmful, and there are always groups that are in favor of just violence. They're attracted to the movement because of the violence, and they just want to commit violence.
How empowered, my word, you can choose another if you so choose, but how empowered would you say these white supremacists are by those January 6 pardons?
Very much empowered, and not just the pardons are one element of it that is an important element, but even the way the January 6th assault was recharacterized by prominent people, by members of Congress, by the former president, now current president, right? That they said, what you saw isn't what you saw. It was really just a tourist visit, and it's the weaponized FBI targeting them when, you can go back and look at the videos. It's pretty clear what happened. So they were already being empowered by that, and not just by President Trump and the federal government, by its state and local government. So people who had open associations with these militant groups had been running for office, had been elevated to appointments to have government roles. And again, the kid on the street with a knife and bear spray is a problem, but the guy who has the controls of government apparatuses, including the police, including the military, including all of our institutions, is actually able to do more harm.
The book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. Let me just ask you point blank, Mike, why law enforcement seem to be so lax about the white supremacist threat of violence.
Writ large over the United States, law enforcement tends to be predominantly white. And, for the average white person who lives in a nice white community, they don't see white supremacists as a threat to them and their families. So it's easier to look at a group that I don't understand, and every white person knows somebody who's racist and knows, okay, this person says dumb things, and thinks he's funny, whatever, but he's not dangerous. He's not going to hurt somebody. Where if they see somebody who's talking about changing society in a way that would challenge that person's notions of what is a safe democracy, that person's dangerous and it's unfamiliar. So when somebody who looks like that person actually engages in a violent act, then I can just assume that everybody who looks like that person or says the same kind of messages is also violent. And I think there is a lot of open racism, explicit racism, still in our society and still in law enforcement.
Are there, how should I phrase this? Are there emerging dangers that you are concerned about?
I am concerned about different police departments taking different notions on how to protect public safety. Mm-hmm. That, certainly now, I don't think state and local agencies can look to the FBI as a leader or any other federal agency as a leader. Usually FBI is the lead in counterterrorism. Mm-hmm. So when you look at domestic terrorism, I don't think they'll be able to rely on federal intelligence, and we'll have to rely on working together as police departments. So if there is a dangerous group coming from one state to another, they know somebody to call in that state, so they can say, hey, who in this group is going to have warrants, who has committed violence in the past, who do we have to watch out for when they come to our community, and how are we going to be better prepared to address it, which is kind of how the police worked these groups in the early 90s. I mean, there was an understanding that these public marches were intentionally insightful, right? That they were inciting, that they were intended to go to a neighborhood where they knew they had political opposition, so that opposition would come out and they could attack them and then say, oh, we were just minding our own business. We were just exercising our speech rights. But anybody who follows them knows that that's what they do. That's a tactic. It's not. And if you understand the tactic, you can address it better.
When we come forward, I want to ask Mike German a direct question about the FBI, given that he's a former FBI agent, fellow now at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program, author of the new book, Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. But my question for Mike when we come forward is how scared, there's a better word, let me just go right at it. How scared should we be? I'm talking now about, when I say we, I mean the demos, everyday people, fellow citizens. How scared should we be of our own FBI in the months and years to come? Should we be frightened of our own FBI? Talk about that part when we come forward on Tavis.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans champion human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Mike German, former FBI agent, fellow at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program. His new book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. There's a chapter in this book called Focusing the FBI. I want to ask about the FBI specifically and whether or not we have entered into an era and I'm mindful, I'm pausing myself even as I say this because I'm thinking of, as I mentioned earlier, the FBI's storied and spotty past. I'm thinking of COINTELPRO. Right. You know where I'm going, right? Yeah. I'm thinking of COINTELPRO. So I can hear somebody saying right now, what do you mean, Tavis, should we be scared now? I can hear somebody saying we've always been scared and always should have been concerned about the FBI, but we are in a new era. Talk to me about how concerned we should be, how scared we should be of our own FBI.
So, as you mentioned, there are communities in this country that have had justification to be scared of the FBI for some time. Yeah. And, certainly there are communities of color. Muslim Americans were targeted during the war on terror and still are and will continue to be. That, is part of this new generation as well. But even environmental groups, right? The environmental activists call it the Green Scare era, where the FBI was targeting groups simply for their opposition to corporate activities that harm the environment. In the first Trump administration, both the administration, Republican members of Congress, and the Attorney General Bob Barr named Antifa, anti-fascists as a domestic terrorism threat. And if somebody in the 1990s, when I was working undercover against these fascist groups, had told me that sometime a president of the United States would identify anti-fascists as the enemy, I would think that's very odd. But it started an effort by the FBI to investigate all these different activist groups trying to find this imaginary global conspiracy that was causing this protest when it was really just people in the community were angry. And I think that's where, and again, if you understand how countries fall from democracy into autocracy, a lot of the things Donald Trump is doing are unpopular, and I think as the ramifications come out will become more unpopular, and people will protest. That's part of our society. But he has empowered this militant part within law enforcement as well that will happily come out and suppress those protests. And that kind of violence then causes the public to be scared and say, hey, you have to do something. And that's when the authoritarian says, well, give me dictatorial powers and I will make things peaceful. But no dictatorship has ever been peaceful.
Our remaining moments with the author of Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within, Mike German, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You've lost so much weight. How'd you do it? I got medical treatment for weight loss through Zelty and lost 50 pounds. I struggled for the longest time, but Zelty makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelty providers can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight, like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. I've heard those medications can help you lose weight, but aren't they expensive? Zelty can help get the medication covered by insurance, so it's as little as $0 a month. What if you don't have insurance? No problem. Zelty may be able to help you get other GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% off the price of name brand medications. I'm ready to start losing weight. How do I get started with Zelty? Just text.
Text SUNNY to 200-300 to get started today with Zelty and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text SUNNY to 200-300. That's SUNNY to 200-300. SUNNY to 200-300.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Mike German, former FBI agent, fellow at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program, author of a provocative and powerful new book called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. I've got just about 3 or 4 minutes here, Mike. Let me ask you right quick here this question. It occurs to me that that I should ask whether or not black folk in particular right now would be welcome inside the FBI. If I'm a young person listening right now, and I want to go into law enforcement like you did all those years ago, would you recommend anybody black going to the FBI right now?
So, I've always been a fighter, and if there's a room somebody doesn't want me in, then I want to get into that room. So I would certainly encourage people to join. And kind of like I said in the very beginning when you asked me why I joined, I think it does take good people inside these institutions.
But is it safe? Is it safe on the inside, though?
I think if you talk to a lot of my colleagues from my time in the FBI, it wasn't all that safe then. I mean, when I joined the FBI, there was a class action lawsuit by black agents, a class action lawsuit by Latino agents, a class action lawsuit by women, a number of women who just recently sued the FBI and won millions of dollars for being discriminated against it during training. So it's certainly a difficult place to work when you don't fit the image, the old J. Edgar Hoover image of an FBI agent, and it's very challenging. But I know black agents who were extremely successful, and found it worthwhile.
I've got 2 minutes left. I'll give it all to you. There's a chapter in your book called A Strategy for Change. So there's always the agency question, right? What do we do?
There's a lot to do. We're still a democracy, even though it's not necessarily functioning as well as it should. Yeah. But make sure your elected representatives know how you feel about these things. And I think the federal government will be a little bit difficult to work with for the time being, but that just means that state and local governments have bigger role, and particularly in addressing concerns about your local department. That's something that the public can have a say in. And the other thing, there's an old saying from Mr. Rogers, look for the helpers.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're seeing here in Los Angeles with these devastating fires that people come out, right? Yeah. The community comes out to protect. So what we need to do is recognize that first they're going to target the groups with the least agencies, that least agency, the least political power. That's why this effort to target trans people, and effort to target undocumented immigrants, that we have to protect all of them, because if you don't protect them, that circle keeps getting bigger. So it's really important to find the local groups that are assisting these communities and the local groups that are building community in a dangerous time.
To be sure, these are dangerous times, and there are emerging dangers that we even know not of as we sit for this conversation. But Mike German has some ideas about how we fight these emerging dangers, particularly as it relates to far-right violence. His book is called Policing White Supremacy, The Enemy Within. Former FBI agent is he, current fellow at the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program. Mike German, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the book. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your service, sir. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you in studio. Just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.